We were sent to reclaim a valley in Europe, a place where the Black Death had already taken everything: people, life, hope. But what we found there, it wasn't just the plague. There was an army waiting for us, an army that should never existed, dead men, walking, fighting like they were still alive. And that's when we realized this mission was unlike anything WED ever faced before. I was a corporal, assigned to the 1 Stone Infantry Division, 22nd Regiment. It was 1347, in the heart of the Black Death spread across Europe. We'd been fighting this damn plague for months, trying to reclaim territories and restore some semblance of order in a world falling apart. This mission, though, wasn't like the others. It was supposed to be straightforward, simple. The operation was called Operation Blackened Dawn. The objective was clear: march into the valley, clear any remaining plague-infested villages, and establish a military presence. Reinforcements would follow, but it was up to us to secure the ground first. We'd been given basic reconnaissance. Nothing out of the ordinary, some maps, details on the terrain, and a vague report of enemy activity that we had to neutralize. Our gear was typical standard-issue Massac rifles, crossbows, heavy armor, and rations for a 3-day trek. Nothing to write home about. But when we gathered in the briefing room, I noticed something strange. The officers were acting off. Their usual professionalism was replaced by nervous glances and hushed conversations. No one said anything outright, but the atmosphere in the room was thick with unease. I'd been in plenty of briefings before, but this one felt different. The officers moved quickly, speaking in half sentences, not letting us ask questions. It was like they wanted to get it over with as fast as possible. Then came the interpreter. He was a local man who had worked with us before, translating messages from nearby villages. I remember him pulling me aside after the briefing. His eyes were wide, almost frantic, as if he was trying to tell me something important. "You will not find what you expect," he said in broken English. "The valley, it has been cursed. The dead, they are not at rest." I brushed it off. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to scare us with superstition, especially in a place as devastated as this. The plague had taken everything, and people had a way of convincing themselves there were darker forces at play. But as we set off from camp, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The air felt heavy, the ground more oppressive. There were no birds in the trees, no rustling of leaves, just silence. Even the usual sounds of a military convoy were muted, as if the world around us was holding its breath. And then there was the map. One detail stuck with me. There was an area marked in dark red, labeled simply as uninhabitable. No explanation, no further intel. It didn't make sense. We were supposed to be clearing everything. Why would a part of the valley be completely off limits? It wasn't like we could just ignore it. It was right in the heart of our route. But that was only the beginning. We set out early the next morning. The convoy was made up of a dozen men, all seasoned soldiers, all carrying the usual heavy load of gear: rifles, crossbows, flasks of water, rations. Nothing extraordinary. The march was long and uneventful at first, the kind of routine patrol you'd expect in a time of plague. We joked, we bantered, trying to take the edge off the tension that had settled over us. For a while, it felt like any other mission. You ever wonder if we're just ghosts? Miller, one of the younger privates, asked as he marched alongside me. "I mean, look at this place. It's all dead. Just like us, walking around like we're still alive." I laughed, but it didn't feel right. He was right, in a way. The land around us had been stripped bare by the plague. Empty villages, broken homes, rotting bodies. The air was thick with the stench of death, and I could feel it creeping into my bones. But we pressed on, just like we always did. Standard procedure. A few of the men kept their eyes peeled for any signs of enemy movement. But there was no enemy to fight, at least. That's what we thought. The plague had done its work. The valley had been abandoned by everyone, and the only enemy we were looking for were the wild animals that had either died or fled. We didn't get far before the unease started to set in. First, the equipment. Nothing big, just little things at first. My rifle jammed for no reason. I checked it twice, cleaned the barrel, but it wouldn't fire properly. A few others had similar problems with their gear. Crossbows not loading, canteens leaking water, nothing that should have happened in the middle of a standard mission. "Probably just the heat," said Carter, one of the veteran soldiers. "Happens to the best of us." But it didn't feel like heat. It felt like something else, something unexplainable. We pushed forward, trying to focus on the task at hand. It was just a malfunction, no reason to panic. When we reached the village at the edge of the valley, the silence hit us like a brick. There should have been something. Life, movement, even the rustle of wind through the trees. But there was nothing. No children playing, no animals roaming. It was like the place had been frozen in time. No footsteps, no sound of life at all. We moved into the village, expecting to find it empty. But there was something strange about it. The houses were abandoned, but the doors were still locked from the inside. Windows were shut tight, as if the villagers had left in a hurry or had been forced to. There were no signs of struggle, but there was also no sign of life. It was then that I noticed the animals, or rather, the absence of them. No dogs barking, no goats bleating, not even the usual crows in the sky. The air felt oppressive, thick with silence, like the world had just stopped turning. And the locals? There wasn't a single soul in sight. It was as if they had just vanished. They should have been there. There were supposed to be survivors, refugees from nearby villages who had been taken in by the valley. But they were nowhere to be found. I tried to shake off the feeling, but it stayed with me. Something wasn't right here. It wasn't just the plague. Something was wrong in this valley, something beyond the death that had already taken so much. That's when we reached the site and everything changed. The further we pushed into the village, the more things felt off. At first I thought it was just the atmosphere, the weight of being in a plague-ridden land. But there was something more, a tension in the air, like something was watching us. We continued to search the buildings, moving cautiously from house to house, but the sense of unease grew with every step. Then I found the footprints. They weren't human, at least, not in the way you'd expect. The prints were deep, as if something heavy had passed through. They led away from the village, toward the thick woods that surrounded the valley. The odd part was how they seemed to disappear. There were no signs of return, no way of knowing where the creature had gone. They weren't animal tracks either. They had a peculiar shape, too wide, too irregular. My first thought was that someone was playing a sick joke, but the longer I studied them, the less I could explain them. I turned to Miller, who was closest. "You seeing this?" I asked. He knelt down beside me and examined the tracks, but didn't say anything. His face was pale, his lips pressed tight. He stood up quickly, brushing off his knees. "Let's keep moving," he said, his voice strained. We should listen to the warning in his voice, but we didn't. We pressed on, moving deeper into the village, hoping to find something that made sense. That was when the first signs of equipment failure started. At first, it was just the radios. Static, nothing more than garbled noise. But then the night vision goggles started to flicker, like they were malfunctioning. I checked my rifle again, still jammed. Others started having similar issues. Canteens leaked water, compasses spun wildly, and the temperature felt wrong. It was like someone had cranked up the heat, but the air was still stagnant. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was suffocating. My sweat turned cold on my skin. That's when I smelled it. It wasn't the usual stench of rot that came with a plague-ridden village. This smell was older, foul, like decaying flesh, but something more, something ancient. It made my stomach twist. I turned to the others, but they weren't saying anything. They could smell it too, but no one wanted to speak it out loud. It wasn't the kind of thing you brought up in a place like this. It felt wrong. We moved further into the village, pushing forward on instinct. That's when I saw the markings. They were old symbols, etched into the stone of a crumbling wall in what looked like blood. Symbols ID never seen before. I've been through enough campaigns to know military markings, religious symbols, even occult sigils. But this wasn't any of that. These were twisted, crude lines, carved deeply into the walls. Some of them resembled faces, hollow eyes, jagged mouths. It looked like something, or someone, had been trapped here, carving its way out. And then there were the bones. I thought it was just another animal carcass at first, but when I stepped closer, I realized it wasn't. They were human bones, not just one or two, but a collection, scattered, broken, as though someone had been feasting on them. The silence was suffocating. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you're not supposed to be there, that you're intruding on something that's far older and darker than you could ever understand. We'd been walking through this village for hours, and no one had said a word. It was as if we were all waiting for something, not sure what, but we knew something was coming. But that was just the beginning. We were standing in the heart of the village, trying to make sense of everything. The footprints, the strange symbols, the bones. It was all building up to something. Something I couldn't quite understand, but I felt it, like a weight pressing down on me. The air had turned heavy, and the stench in the village seemed to grow stronger with every step we took. Then, it happened. The first sound. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the creak of the buildings. It was something else. Something deep, something that rumbled beneath the ground and echoed through the village like a distant growl. A low, guttural noise that sent a chill straight down my spine. I froze, my hand instinctively gripping my rifle. The others must have heard it too, because they all stopped moving. No one said anything. We all stood there, listening to the silence, waiting for it to happen again. The growl was followed by a series of soft thuds, like something heavy moving through the ground, closer now, closer than before. I looked around, but there was nothing, no shadows, no movement, just the stillness. And the noise, still there, like it was coming from the earth itself. My mind raced. Was it an animal? Could it be the wind causing the buildings to shift? But no, I knew better than to dismiss it as that. I turned to Carter, one of the privates, but his face was pale. He was shaking, and I could see the fear in his eyes. Had been on enough missions to know when something wasn't right. That wasn't a normal sound, he muttered, his voice barely audible. That wasn't anything I've heard before. Before I could respond, the radios went dead. I cursed under my breath, pulling the receiver to my ear again, trying to get any kind of signal, but all I heard was static. The equipment had been glitching all day, but now? It was worse. It was as if there was something actively blocking it. I checked the others, and I could see that everyone was having the same issue. Radios, compasses even. Our night vision gear. It all went dead at once. And then, the first shadow. At first I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but no. I saw it clearly. Just on the edge of the light, a figure, tall, impossibly tall, standing at the far end of the village. I blinked, and when I looked again, it was gone. I was the only one who saw it, but the others noticed the change in the air, the way the temperature dropped all of a sudden, the way the hairs on the back of our necks stood up. I moved toward the figure, my instincts screaming at me to get a closer look, but the moment I stepped forward, one of the men grabbed my arm. "Don't go," he said, voice shaking. I could see it in his eyes. He had seen something too, something I hadn't. The interpreter, who had been silent until now, spoke up, his voice frantic. "It's them. It's the dead. They're not just dead. They're watching us. You must leave. You must go now." His eyes were wide with panic, and I'd never seen him like this. He wasn't the type to panic, not on a mission. He was the calm one, the reliable one. But now, he was terrified. "Who? What are you talking about?" I demanded, but he just shook his head, stepping back from the group. They never stopped. They're coming for us, the ones in the valley, the ones the plague couldn't touch. I couldn't process it. It didn't make sense. But I knew something was wrong, something we couldn't see but could feel. That feeling of being hunted, of being watched, grew unbearable. Then came the real shock. We didn't move fast enough. The air was thick with tension, but I didn't understand just how much danger we were in until the creature stepped out of the shadows. We had all seen it, this thing that wasn't human, but none of us fully comprehended what we were facing. Not until it revealed itself. It came slowly at first, like it was savoring the moment, like it knew we were watching. Tall, towering even. It moved with an unnatural grace, its limbs long and twisted, like something that had been distorted by time itself. Its skin was pallid, almost sickly, like it had never seen sunlight. But what stood out most were its eyes, empty, black pits that seemed to drink in the light around them. The air grew colder as it moved, the temperature dropping so fast that I could see my breath. My body was already tense, but that cold made everything sharper, more real. The creature didn't make a sound, It just stood there, staring at us like it was waiting for us to do something. I raised my rifle, but my hands shook. It was too much, too wrong. I could feel it in my bones, this overwhelming sense of dread that told me this thing was beyond anything I could kill. But we were soldiers. We didn't get to back down. Not now. I shouted for everyone to open fire. The sound of gunfire rang out, harsh and deafening, but nothing happened. The bullets tore through the air, but they didn't hit. They didn't even slow it down. It was like we were shooting at smoke. The creature barely flinched. It didn't even seem to notice the attack. It just kept coming, its long arms moving in a way that didn't seem natural, bending and stretching in impossible angles. Then it attacked. It moved faster than I thought possible. One moment it was standing there, and the next it was on top of Private Harris. He didn't have a chance. The creature's hand shot out like a whip, grabbing Harris by the throat and lifting him off the ground with ease. Harris struggled, his hands clawing at the creature's grip, but it was pointless. His body went limp, his neck snapping with a sickening crack. And the worst part, he didn't even die. He just hung there, limp in its grasp, his eyes open and vacant, like he was already gone but not really gone. We kept firing, but it was useless. The creature wasn't even bleeding. There were no wounds, no signs that it was human or even alive. "Fall back," I screamed, but no one moved. No one could. The air itself was against us now, thick and heavy, pressing us down. The creature dropped Harris' body with a casual flick of its wrist, like he was a rag doll. It turned its attention on us, eyes narrowing as if it was deciding which one of us to take next. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The fear was paralyzing. We had no way out, no way to fight it, and still, it didn't stop. It didn't need to. It was endless, unstoppable. Then something shifted. The ground beneath us trembled, like something was moving beneath the earth. The valley had always felt wrong, but now it felt like we were sinking into it, like the very land itself was part of the nightmare. The creature didn't need weapons, didn't need tactics. It was a force of nature, a force that defied everything we knew about war, about combat, and nothing we had could stop it. And that's when everything changed. We didn't wait. The moment Harris dropped, it was like a switch flipped in all of us. We turned and ran, but there was nowhere to hide. The creature was still there, standing in the middle of the valley, its gaze following us as we scrambled for safety. We ran hard, our boots pounding the earth, but every step felt like it was dragging us deeper into the nightmare. The valley wasn't big, but it felt like a vast, endless expanse now. The air was thick with panic, and every breath I took was filled with the smell of death. My mind raced. What the hell was this thing? And how were we supposed to fight something that didn't die? The first firefight happened when we made it to the edge of the village. We were trying to break out of the open ground and take cover in a building, but it was too late. The creature wasn't far behind, and we weren't fast enough. We turned, firing our weapons, but it didn't matter. We weren't even hitting it. I watched as one of the guys, Larkin, fired his crossbow at the creature's chest, but the bolt just flew through it, like the thing was made of smoke. He turned to me, his face a mask of terror. "We need to get out of here," he shouted, but the words barely reached me through the haze of panic in my head. I nodded, but there was no plan. There was no strategy. We were just running, hoping we'd make it out alive. But the silence around us was worse than the chaos. The moment we turned and fled, the world seemed to close in on us. The creature didn't chase us. It didn't need to. It was like it was already in our heads, whispering that we couldn't escape, that we were already dead. Then, everything went quiet. The firing stopped. The heavy breathing of the men, the creaking of the walls, the thumping of our boots, everything fell silent, like we were in the middle of a tomb. No more gunfire, no more orders shouted, just the cold, oppressive silence of a place where death had already taken everything. We finally reached the extraction point, but it wasn't much of a victory. The helicopter had come, and it had been a desperate race to get to it before we were overwhelmed. We'd lost 2 more men on the way. I'd never seen bodies left like that before, torn apart, but still moving, still fighting, even after the life had been ripped from them. But we made it. Barely. Back at the base, everything changed. The commander couldn't look us in the eye. He was shaking, pale, like he didn't know how to process what we'd just gone through. Had seen the reports, seen the bodies, and he couldn't wrap his mind around it. But we didn't talk about it. We couldn't. Our statements were wiped clean, marked top secret, and locked away. Everything we had seen, everything we had fought, erased from the records. No one ever mentioned the valley again. No one asked about the men who didn't make it back. We weren't allowed to talk about the things we saw, the things we fought. Orders came down from higher-ups to move on, to focus on the next mission. But nothing was the same after that. Nothing ever could be. But what happened next took things to another level. I've tried to forget it, tried to push it out of my mind, bury it somewhere deep where I wouldn't have to think about it again. But it stays with you. It haunts you in ways that don't make sense. In the quiet moments, I hear the growl again. I see the eyes. I feel it, whatever it was. You can't just leave something like that behind. Not when it follows you. If anyone ever tries to cover this up, if the files disappear or the witnesses go silent, you'll know why. Because some things are meant to stay buried. But not everything dies.